All right, here tonight we have a man who has come out of retirement after stepping away from the game to go pursue some MMA and boxing. He's had some legendary fights with Nick Williams and Joe Pace already this season, and that is one Mr. Justin Schmit. Justin, how you doing tonight, man?
Good, man. How about yourself?
Good. I appreciate you taking the time to come on the show and talk some fight stories. You've kind of taken the whole FPHL by storm this year with some of your fights. They've already been broken down by like John Boy Media, which is one of like the biggest baseball channels, but when he covers hockey stuff, it blows up. So it's insane.
Yeah, I mean, the direction of the game's changed so much. With these young guys now and stuff, and I think people are just excited to have guys like me and Pacer and Willie still kicking around and bringing that exciting brand of hockey to the minors, right?
Oh, exactly. It's true. And the FPHL, I've always wanted to catch a game. I'd like to catch one once I move up to North Carolina this coming week. I know there's a couple of teams around there. But I've always it's an exciting league. Some people say it might resemble Slapshot a little bit. I think like last year Nick Wright got into it with the coach when he was playing for Columbus, and I know Nick's listening to the show, but no, it's a fun league, man. And like I said, you've been taking it by storm this year.
Yeah, like I said, I've been pretty fortunate that there's still, I'm still able to stay relevant in a sense. I wouldn't my skill set's not, I've definitely lost a stride or two since I started playing the game, but I'm lucky that there's still a few old tough guys left for me to still collect a paycheck.
Absolutely, man. Well, we'll jump right into it. So you were actually born in Strathmore, Alberta. When did you start playing hockey? Was it like straight as soon as you could start walking, you put on skates and got on the pond, or did it come a little bit
Um,
later for you?
yeah, I'm actually from Saskatchewan.
Oh, okay.
I grew up in Saskatchewan. Yeah, as long as I can remember, I had skates on my feet. My uncle was, my uncle was a big Habs fan, so I grew up a Montreal Canadiens fan, and yeah, right from the word go, I think I had skates on my feet. I remember putting my skates on and tearing the shit out of my grandma's linoleum one night. I don't know, her and grandpa went out somewhere and they left me with a babysitter or something. And I put my skates on and just completely shredded their kitchen. And I was in pretty big shit after that. But yeah, as long as I can remember, I've had skates on my feet.
Right on, man. So, well, you actually got into the SJHL, which unfortunately I can't pull up your fight card from there because, of course, Drop Your Gloves is gone. I'm sure you probably knew about that site back then. Um,
Hmm.
so, but you put up some solid PIMs. You almost had, I think, 300 your first year, or no, excuse me, that was your first year in Huntsville. But you put up some great PIM numbers out in the SJ. When did the fighting kind of start? Did it start when you were kind of a teenager? Like or maybe like that, almost like that mid-teens where you're kind of like 12, 13. Did you start adapting to the role, that physical side of hockey more when checking was allowed in like the Pee Wee leagues that you were in?
Yeah, I had, like back home back then, in like the early mid 90s, you could, right from, novice Adam, Pee Wee, Bantam, you could fight and you just get kicked out of the game. And then, you'd be back the next one. You didn't get suspended or anything like that. Um, so I always had one or two. And then I was always, kind of a, middle of the pack player on the better teams. Like I'd be like a six forward or a, second or third defenseman, growing up on the rep teams. And then I went and played midget AAA when I was 16, and that, at that time, there was a lot of tough kids playing midget AAA. Then that was in 2000 or something, and I started really fighting, and then that's when I went to, I started going to junior camps when I was 16. And back then, you go to a junior camp and sometimes you'd fight 8 or 9 times in a weekend. And then, after my first year midget AAA, I kind of came to the conclusion that I was probably never going to make it, just on skill alone. So then, 17, my 17-year-old year, I logged a few minutes as a D man, but I think I had 12 or 13 majors in midget AAA. And then, yeah, in junior, like right from, my first game of junior, I was going everybody, just trying to make a name for myself. And like, I took some savage beatings, when I was a teenager. Like, I was 18 years old and I'm fighting, 20-year-olds with full beards, and I'm like 5'8", 160 pounds. And somebody told me, an old jujitsu coach of mine actually said, before you're gonna get your blue belt in jujitsu, you got to get a black belt and get your ass kicked. And I definitely got my black belt and getting my ass kicked those first few years of junior.
Oh man. So with the fighting in junior, and I know you have like I mentioned before, with the MMA and kind of the boxing, did you start any of that when you were in junior?
I started boxing when I was real young, like,
Gotcha.
6, 7 years old. I had gloves on my hands, and I was, hitting the bag, and, taking lessons and stuff. I didn't have too many amateur fights. And I didn't actually really take it to the next level until I was kind of semi-retired from playing the pro game. And I was playing senior back home, and I actually opened an MMA gym. And then I started taking it, turned it into kind of my full-time job. And that's when I think around 2009-ish, I, became a full-time MMA fighter, full-time professional MMA fighter.
Right on, man. So you actually ended up, for your first year, what a team to get thrown onto for your first year pro. You end up in Huntsville. How did you actually end up there from the SJ?
Um, I went to, I started in Elmira, actually,
Oh, okay.
in the old United League. And they, they had so much skill and so many tough guys, right? Like that, I think that year they had like Dale Lupel, Curtis Tidball, Chris Shaw. Like, they were, pretty, and I was raw, right? I was 21 years old, and I definitely couldn't keep up. And they basically just kind of said to me, like, go down to the Southern League in Huntsville and develop, and we'll see how it kind of progresses. And I was devastated, right? I'm like, my life's over, like, I'm not, I'm getting cut again. I'm 21, and I went down to Huntsville, and I'm playing with like James Patterson, Mike DeGurse, Matt Carmichael, Kelly Miller, like all these guys, these old guys that are just legends of the game down there. And it's
Right.
Huntsville, Alabama. Trevor Krasowicz was there, and it's Huntsville, Alabama, which I knew nothing about the state of Alabama, right? Like, I'm a Canadian kid, right? And come down from New York, and I just absolutely fell in love with, the Southern culture, and, just everything about being in the South. And yeah, like, I was just a kid, and I had all these old vets on my team. Luke Phillips was on our team. Dan Buccello was on our team. Man, there's so many tough guys in the league at that time. And like I said, I just, I'd always kind of fought to stay in the thick of things, right? Like, I was playing a little bit, but I always had to fight to stay in the thick of things. I think my first year in Huntsville, I had, 300 penalty minutes, or close to 300 PIMs. And every one of those penalty minutes was fighting a heavy, like every night I was fighting, I'd look down the bench, and there'd be 8 or 9 guys that I could potentially, get my ass kicked by.
Right. Well, according to hockeyfights.com, you managed to rack up 22 fights that season in your rookie year. And like you said, this isn't the SJ anymore. These dudes are established, and they're big dudes. So you had 49 games and threw up 274 PIMs. That's getting after it. But before you get into some of the guys you fought, because I have some of the names down, how was it? I got to ask about Goose, of course, because he helped me get you on the show here, and 2, I had him on the show previously. So do you have any good Goose stories that are, I won't say family friendly, but podcast friendly?
PG-13 Goose stories.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like, I mean, Goose was my best friend that year. He treated me like, Goose was probably as old then as I am now. So I was
Right.
this young, like wild kid coming in. Goose is kind of that old, vet. And I remember, I was always kind of Goose is a monster. Goose is 6'4", 230, and I was 5'10", 200 pounds. And I'm fighting all these beasts, right? And Goose, I was always a pretty clean fighter. I never did too much dirty shit. And Goose was like, man, you like, fuck you, if you're gonna keep fighting these guys, you got to make them scared of you. Like, fucking eye gouge them, rip, bite them, do something, headbutt them, right? Like, Goose, I can't do that, right? But that's the way Goose played the game. And, the guy's got championship rings from 4 different teams. He's a great captain, and like, he's a great friend. He's a great leader. But I mean, I couldn't imagine playing against Mike DeGurse. Like, he absolutely terrifies me, and he's one of my best friends in the world.
Right, absolutely. And for those listening, I encourage you to go check out a video. You look up any DeGurse fight and just go down the rabbit hole, and you'll be entertained for hours. But go check out a fight if you want to talk about some of like the dirtier shit or whatever. It's up in the Quebec League. He's playing with Laval, and he's fighting I think it was Valenti at the time. Takes his helmet off, throws his helmet at Valenti, then goes after him. And that's the shit so it's like you said, he's just a different breed of
An
fucking
absolute
guy.
lunatic. Like, I've seen Goose going to other teams' benches. Like I've seen, like, he was probably the craziest human being I ever played hockey with. And then, off the ice, he's probably one of the most genuine, gentle human beings. Like, I stayed with him and his wife last summer when I came down here, and, like, just opens his home to me. And he's got a beautiful family in Huntsville now, and he's just a great human being.
Yeah, for sure. It was really cool to meet him, and it sucks that we were there for such a short amount of time. We couldn't do more and get together and talk about some old SPHL or Central League stories or anything like that. But I'm sure it would have been a riot. Another guy I got to ask you about on that team was Luke Phillips, who of course is another former guest of the show. So I got to ask you about Luke Phillips real quick. How was it playing with him?
Oh, Philly was wild. Philly was cut from, like, Philly was a smaller guy like myself. But Philly was pretty wild. I remember we had a bench brawl against Richmond one night, and he tried to kick a guy. Like, the guy was bent over, and Philly tried to kick him in the face with his skate. Like, Philly was about as wild as they came. And Philly had absolutely zero athletic skills in his entire body. Like, I have very limited athletic skills, and I have more athletic skill in my pinky than Philly has in his entire body. But Philly would absolutely do anything to anyone to win a hockey game, or to excite the crowd. Like, Philly was the ultimate competitor. He almost reminds you ever see that show Rudy?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, that's kind of Luke Phillips.
Right
Except,
on.
like, really, 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 really tough too.
Absolutely, man. Well, getting into some of your fights here, of course, you had 22 of them, but I kind of dug up some of the bigger names that folks might know. One of them is actually Matt Goody. What was it like fighting him?
So Goody was ripping the league apart. Like, Goody was tearing the league apart that year. I think he just got sent down from Providence. I think he was in Boston and then went to the American League in Providence, and then ended up in Richmond playing for John Brophy. And Goody was absolutely shredding people apart. And Goody's a massive human being. And so Goody and Brendan Tedstone, Teddy?
Oh yeah, Butterbean.
Yeah, so Goody and Tedstone were good buddies, and Teddy and I are good buddies. So we had Richmond. My first game against Goody was Richmond came to Huntsville, and Teddy, so Goody had already heard about me. And Teddy, I was talking to Teddy on the phone, and he's like, yeah, Goody really wants you tonight. It's going to happen. And I'm like absolutely shitting my pants the night before, right? Like, I don't think I slept a wink. So I'm, laying in bed, heart's beating, and Goose comes and grabs me for pregame skate. And Goose is like, you don't have to fucking fight that guy tonight, man. I got him. And it was like Goose's first game back in, almost a year. He hadn't played in almost a year. And Goose went out and fought that night for me. And then we played them again. We played Richmond again later on at home. And I was like, I got to do it. Like, if I'm going to have any self-respect left, I'm going to have to fight Matt Goody. And we didn't take, because we didn't have to wear windshields at that time, right? So it was just, just straight helmet. So very rarely did we take off our own helmet before a fight. So me and Goody are kind of having one. And I remember him hitting me on top of the head with my helmet on. And all of a sudden, like, my helmet was completely loose. And I was like, I couldn't really see, and he hit me so hard that it like blew all the screws and rivets out of my helmet. And like almost like on that show Goon, when he punches the guy in the stands and the guy's helmet explodes.
Oh yeah,
that's kind of what happened when Goody hit me, and then I just kind of tied him up. It was a decent fight. I don't think there's any footage of it out there, but he probably was one of the guys that hit me the hardest for sure.
Yeah, no kidding. If you're breaking a bucket, you got to have a fucking cinder block on your hand there. Holy shit.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Another guy that you fought that season, and I had him on the show. I was fortunate enough to get him on, but that was Craig Stahl, the Chief. What was it like fighting him, man?
Stalzy was such a cool guy. So like, I'm playing in Columbus now, right? So his jersey's in the rafters.
Right.
And he was our coach, Jerome's first captain. So, like, when Jerome took over as the head coach in Columbus, Stalzy was his first captain. The Chief was, he was such a good player too. And he was a pretty honest player. Like, as tough as he was, he played the game the right way. And I fought him, partway through the season, and we had a pretty good scrap. And I split him open pretty good in the fight. Like, he was cut open, and we got to the penalty box and he was bleeding, and he looked over at me, and I think he was like almost excited for me that, that like because he knew, he knows what it's like being a young kid fighting an old veteran like that. He's like, Smitty, look what you did, man. Like, you did good tonight, kid. So then at the end of that game, he was all stitched up, and some kind of scrum happened. And I went after somebody, and all of a sudden I see these gloves shoot out in front of me. I turn around, it's Stalzy again. So me and Stalzy fought twice that night. And then it was at the end of the game. So we were both suspended, and we had a home and home. We played in Huntsville on the Friday, and then we were in Columbus on the Saturday. And like, I don't know if you're familiar with Columbus, but like across from the rink, there's, some gas stations, and I was suspended. So I walked across to the gas station, and it's kind of a rougher area. Like, there's always shootings and stuff over there. And so I went over to the gas station to grab something, and I was walking out of the gas station, and all these characters that were there. I'm just this like little skinny kid from Saskatchewan, and all these characters are out there, and they're like harassing me, and they're probably gonna beat the shit out of me and steal my money. And Stalzy pulled up in his truck, and he's like, Schmitty, get in, buddy. I got you. Because he was suspended too. It just happened. He was at the gas station at the same time. So I jumped in his truck. And this is like, so the night before I split him open for stitches, and then we were both suspended from our second fight. He drove me back to the ring before I got robbed.
That's tremendous. You're fighting him to the game before, then he's enforcing for you, protecting you off the ice.
Protected me. Yeah, exactly. And that was really the only time I met him. I don't know if that was his last year, but we fought that one night, and then we played. Like I would like to, he's one of those guys that, I always had a tremendous amount of respect for, and, like the way he played the game, and it'd be cool to, sit down and kind of pick his brain and tell some stories about them old days, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. I think me and him had like a 2-hour long interview. It was late one night. I think we were both getting after it, and we were both just drunk at the end of the episode. It was a good time. No, Stahl's a great dude. And so another dude, the last guy we'll touch on from your Huntsville Havoc days, and I believe he was actually a former teammate of yours in the SJ, was David Siegel.
Oh, Siegs. Yeah, Siegs and I we lived together our 20-year-old year. We lived together in Melfort, and we were really good buddies. And then he came to he went to Knoxville, and I went to Huntsville. So we had that, that Knoxville Huntsville kind of rivalry. And yeah, we fought each other a bunch that year. But the funny thing was, you know, like we were both just trying to make a name for ourselves, and we were good friends and stuff. Like it was never any hard feelings. But we had military night in Huntsville. So the arena was sold out in Huntsville. I don't know what the BBC seats, like 7,000 or 8,000. And you know, there's a whole big section of troops in their camels, right? This big camouflage section. And I managed to get the upper hand on Siegs. And after the fight, this is the only time in my career I ever did anything after a fight as far as like celebrate or showboat. And I turned to the troops and like saluted them, and the place went nuts, and I felt really cool. So the next night we're in Knoxville, and it's their military night. So we have a home and home with Knoxville, and it's their military night. So me and Siegs square off, and Siegs absolutely fucking pistol whips me, like beats the living shit out of me. And like I'm laying in the middle of the ice in a puddle of blood, and Siegs just buries his head and skated off. And it was the ultimate kick in the face. Like I was like, man, you're so much cooler than me. And so after that, I will never, ever, ever, ever showboat, because shit like that will always, always, always come back to haunt you. And realistically, showboating at a fight, after a fight, I think it's completely fucking disrespectful and, you know, kind of obscene, actually.
Yeah, for some of the fights, like, you know, if it's both for momentum and you kind of want to hype up the crowd a little bit, I don't mind it. Like, you know, if you're like disrespecting a guy or something, it's a bit different. You know, I think it got famous once Ty Domi started doing it. I think that's when you started seeing more of like the after fight antics and stuff like that.
Yeah, if you want to see that shit, watch professional wrestling.
Oh man. So actually the next season you ended up with the Rocky Mountain Rage out in the CHL. And you fought one dude, minor league legend, but we'll get to him. But you had a teammate on that roster with you, and he was actually on my buddy Darren over at the Fourth Line Voice. Better send my fucking check in the mail for pumping his tires for his podcast. But Colt King was one of your teammates out there. What was it like playing with Colt King, man?
I love King. Him and I are still, you know, like we don't stay in touch as much as I'd like to, but Kinger and I were really close that year. He lived with who did he live with? I think he lived with the guy named Pat Sutton. And yeah, Kinger was like as tough as they came, but I took the you know, kind of took the most of the fights at that time, because Kinger was more of an American League guy. You know, he's down in the Central League, and he didn't have to fight. He was one of our best forwards. But anytime I saw Kinger drop the gloves, he's a big left hand, he's a big southpaw. And every time I saw Kinger drop the gloves, like somebody was getting beat up.
Yeah, cool. He was one of those guys, like towards the end, he didn't have as many fights, but he just laid the hammer on dudes. It was just, you could tell like he was fucking tough, man. Colt King
he was nuts, and he was a little older, and I was pretty young and squirrely back then too. And there was a lot of nights that Kinger used to have to carry me home. You know, I was in we'd go out and I'd get a little carried away, and Kinger would carry me home and tuck me into bed and make sure I was safe and sound.
That's great.
He's just a great teammate and a great friend.
Yeah, for sure. So, you know, the two guys I'll ask you about from fighting that out there with the Rocky Mountain Rage. One guy who actually was still playing up until recently, I don't think he plays anymore, but Dennis Seacard.
Yeah, so Danny, well, I got some Danny stories that I put, because Danny and I played together in Tulsa later on.
Yep.
But when I fought him, you know, this is like almost 20 years ago. When I fought him, he was kind of just breaking into the league himself. And he was a little bit of a lunatic, and I don't, you know, I know I won the fight. I don't think there's any video of it anywhere, but I know I won the fight. I didn't think much of him, you know, like I was like, oh, he's just kind of a little rat. And then later on in his career, like he was absolutely demolishing guys. And, you know, he wasn't that big. You know, he wasn't an overly huge guy. But the thing about Danny was he was so strong. Like he was so physically strong, and he was like one of those, like he was almost like he almost reminded me of like a bulldog, like he had no neck, and he was he was a tough kid. But yeah, from what I remember from our fight, it wasn't anything to write home about. But when him and I played together in Tulsa the next year in the Central League, he lived right across from me in our apartments, and I lived by myself because I was married by then. So my ex-wife now and my kids and I were living in in the one apartment, and him and Jason Lawmaster lived in the other apartment. And yeah, I could tell you a million stories, but you'd never be able to put those ones on the air about me and Denny and Lawmaster.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we'll skip ahead a little bit, but how was Lawmaster as well?
He was awesome. He was our captain there, or no, Jeff Fisher was the captain, but Lawmaster was our player assistant. Lawsy was, just a great old like veteran presence on the back end. He was our number one D man, and like I said, to me, I played with all those old guys. Like I'm an old guy now, but I played with all those guys, and like I try to provide that same. I try to treat these young guys the same as those old guys like him and Brent Culleton and Goose and Patterson. All those guys treated me. They taught me a lot of things about how to behave off the ice, as well as things on the ice, right?
Absolutely. So the other guy you fought that year, I'll ask you about with the Rocky Mountain Rage. Legendary, one a marketing dream with his last name, but legendary tough guy in the minor leagues, Robin Big Snake.
Yeah, so Snake and I have been best friends. Like we grew up together. He grew up 20 miles from me, so we knew each other all growing up. And so we fought a few times, and when we were younger growing up, but we were always really great friends. I actually, to be honest with you, I just got off the phone with him last night. He called me when we were coming back down from Delaware. I had a bullshit with him on the phone. But yeah, so he was playing for Fort Worth, and I was playing for Denver, or for the Rage. And I think they flew into Denver, and then their hotel was somewhere over by us. And Robin called, Schmitty, like, let's go for supper or whatever. I haven't seen you in a couple months or whatever, because we hung out in the summertime every day. We trained together in the summertime. So we ended up going out for supper and having a few, and then ended up getting pretty carried away. And he ended up staying at my house that night. And like he didn't even make it to his hotel room. So I drove him to there. So they pregame skated before us. So I drove him to their pregame skate, and then I ended up sleeping in my truck for like an hour. And so that night, and I played about 30 seconds a game at that time, and Robin was a point a game guy, so it was a pretty good trade off, I think. For us, him being in as rough a shape as he was. So I ended up fighting earlier in the game, and then Snaker was like hurting, like you could smell booze coming out of his pores at the face off, right? And Snake we were up like 7-2 against Fort Worth, and there was like 30 seconds left the game, and Snake was picking on Chip Dunleavy was the guy's name. Good kid. He was from Denver, and Snake was kind of picking on him at the face-off. And Tracy Eglund, our coach, I was kind of like slouched over on the bench, and I was kind of a hurting unit too. And Aggie goes, Schmitty, get out there, fight Snake. So I jumped out and pulled Chip off. I'm like, Rob, let's go, let's have one. And he's like, all right, let's just, let's take her easy, like nobody needs to be a hero, right? Yeah, all right. So we take it right to center ice. And I'm thinking, we're going to grab and we're going to have a fight, but, we're not going to get carried away, right? All of a sudden, I'm behind about 6, right? And he's like, whap, 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 whap. And he's just feeding me my lunch. my head ends up stuck inside the sleeve of my jersey, and I'm like blind, and all I feel are just these these sledgehammers hitting me in the face. So I get to the dressing room, my eyes are swelled shut, my nose is over by my ear somewhere, and my phone starts ringing. I'm putting my dress clothes back on, my phone's ringing, and it's Jamie, Robin's wife, and she's calling me, "You assholes, I was watching the game. You guys are so stupid." It was pretty funny. And then I think me and Robin ended up going out and having a few that night. I think they flew out the next morning. I think I had to scrape them onto an airplane at the Dallas airport the next morning again. But Rob and I've been lifelong friends, and we'll be friends till the day we die. Like I said, I stay in touch with Robin, not as much as I'd like to right now, being down here and stuff, but any opportunity I get to have a visit with Robin, we get caught up. And like I said, it's nothing for him to show up at my house in the summertime and for me to walk in the door and Robin would be sitting on my couch, playing with my dogs, or vice versa. I'll go to his house and he'll be out, and I'll have supper with Jamie and Phoenix, his daughter. Like we're that close of friends.
That's awesome, man. That's great. Yeah, Big Snake, absolute legend in the enforcer and minor pro hockey world for sure.
And one of probably one of the more underrated talents too.
Like for sure. Yeah, he was
Robin could play the game.
Yeah.
He wasn't. He's another guy that probably could have played at a high. He probably could have played in the NHL, or he played in the American League, but he probably could have played in the NHL. I know he went to a lot of NHL camps. If he hadn't got himself roped into that fighter role so much, like they expected. Robin's my size, and they expected him to be out there fighting John Scott or Jody Shelley or those guys. Whereas Robin had a little more skill, I think, but he wasn't big enough to be a heavyweight, but he was trying to be. Back then, to be a heavy in any league, you had to be 6'8", 300 pounds, kind of thing.
Yeah, you had to be just like a mammoth among all these people. So actually, you ended up back in Huntsville the following season, and you had a guy on the team I got to ask you about, and that was at this point, man. It's funny, you look at the roster from when you were on there before, and just now how many like legends that aren't on that team anymore, like no DeGurse, Phillips, anybody like that. But a guy I got to ask you about is Kyle Sheen.
Sheener and I grew up together as well. Sheener was I saw it once again. I knew Sheener growing up. Sheen was another guy that, probably he was tough. But Sheen just never really found his found his groove in the minors, like he just never could ever, call a place home, whereas he probably, if he found a good spot and he stuck, he could still be playing, like Sheener is a talented hockey player and tough, but he never seemed to get any traction, in a spot,
Right. Well, before I ask you about the guy you fought, this guy you fought twice, and I had him on the show as well. Great dude. But I got to ask, so you brought it up a little bit before, before you got in one of your fights with Goody, the aspect of, the tough guy role, the enforcer, did you ever have any problems like sleeping the night before certain games?
I still do. I'm 37, and going into certain cities, or when I know that me and Pacer are gonna go, or I gotta fight Willie, I still to this day have I get anxiety from it and stuff. But it's I'm blessed to be able to do this still. So I'm definitely not complaining about it, but it does weigh heavy on your mind. But like I said, it's part of the role. I'm sure goal scorers probably have nightmares about certain goalies, and certain goalies have nightmares about certain goal scorers. I've never been fortunate enough to ever be put in one of those positions, but so I guess I just gotta look at it as it's my job, and I got to do it.
Absolutely. Well, the guy I'm going to ask you about, you actually fought him twice that year. And dude fought in the Quebec League. He was a part of the Black and Blue Battle of the Hockey Enforcers tournament going on. And that's Jason Bone. What was it like fighting him? You fought him twice that year.
Yeah, Boner was another guy that I lost sleep over. So he was in Jacksonville, and I was in Winston-Salem by that point. Huntsville traded me to Winston-Salem. And we played them in the first round of playoffs. We were in Jacksonville, and like you go into Jacksonville, and their beer gardens there were called the Boneyard. Like Jason Bone was an absolute legend in Jacksonville, Florida, and like absolutely terrifying. Like he's 6'4", 230 pounds. He always skated like really hunched over, like so he almost looked like a fucking like a Neanderthal, right? Shaved head. And so they played the national anthem game 1 in Jacksonville. They played the national anthem, and he's standing there, and he didn't take his eyes off me. Like, so in Jacksonville, the way the rink was, we stood like facing like the Stars and Stripes were hung like kind of in the middle of the arena. So
Gotcha.
both teams were both teams looked up at the flag, and Boner is in the starting lineup, and I'm on the bench, and he's like his eyes are as big as dinner plates, and he didn't take them off of me, right? And I'm absolutely shitting my pants on the bench. Like, I'm like, oh, this like, so I'm like, okay, this is the first round of playoffs, and I was logging a lot of minutes back then too. Like I was killing penalties, and I was second power play unit, so I was playing quite a bit, and I'm like, I'm gonna be an absolute fucking disaster if I don't, go out there and do it. Like I can't even think right now. So I just said to our coach, I said, it was Mark Richards at the time. I said, Richie, just put me out right now. Like, let me get this over with. So I jumped out, and I was a D-man. Boner was a forward, and I jumped out, and I just lined up next to him. He's like, he looked down, and he's like, are you ready? I'm like, yeah, and I'm trying to be as scary as I can, right? Yeah, I'm ready. So we actually had a pretty good one. And we were going, we were trading toe to toe, and the rink in Jacksonville's going bananas. We were going toe to toe, and I caught him with a left, and he kind of slipped to go over backwards. And I hesitated for a split second, and he planted his back leg and just came over the top with a big one, and like shook every part of my body went numb, and I kind of dropped my head, and he hit me again and dropped me to my knees. I was like, well, whatever, I got that out of the way, and we lost that game. So the next night we were back in Winston-Salem, and they had a kid who actually played. He was actually one of my first pro fights. He played in Columbus. His name was Connor McDonald. He's a real tough kid. He actually passed away in a motorbike accident 15 years ago now. But I fought Connor earlier in that game, and then I did pretty good. And we were up 3-1 or something, and then Boner comes, like a gargoyle comes out, and you ready, kid? I'm like, yeah, all right, Boner. And I ended up having my second fight with him. I wish there was footage of that second with him, because it was actually a lot more, neither one of us went down. It was a real good fight too. I was, but it was Boner was tough, and Boner was absolutely terrifying. That was his last season. He retired after that. But he's another guy I've stayed in touch with, and he's a really great guy, and what he does, in his community. He's from Manitoba and does so much work with like underprivileged kids and stuff. Boner's another guy that's just a stand-up individual.
Absolutely. Well, I just this question just popped into my mind because I thought about it when I mentioned that he fought in the Black and Blue Battle of the Hockey Enforcers tournament. So actually, there is a new tournament coming out that people might have heard of, run by AJ Galante, called Ice Wars, and it's going to be almost like the same thing. It's a hockey fight for people who are listening. Like, what are you talking about? It is like an MMA fight, but it's literally a hockey fight. Is there actually any chance that you're going to compete in that?
Yeah, I've been talking with AJ almost weekly. We're just kind of ironing out the details right now. but yeah, I was one of the first guys they contacted about it. So I'm not sure who I'm going to be fighting or when I'm going to be fighting or where I'm going to be fighting, but I well, there's the first one in Prince George, and I was like begging the promoter. This is when I was a kid in junior, and I was begging them to get me on the show. And I think Dean Mayran won the first one.
Yes, he did.
So I wanted to fight on that one because my best friend in the world is Derek Parker, and he was on it, and I wanted to get on it, but I was like 5'10", 165 pounds when I was 18. So they're like, "Yeah, kid, you might want to tread carefully in this one." So they didn't put me on that one. And then they had one over in Finland years later.
I think that one was
And I was
or something like that.
Ice Wars or Ice. Yeah, I can't remember what it's called.
I don't. My buddy Yuka out in Finland was a big promoter in that, and I think it was the Ice Warriors is what it was called at the time.
Yeah. So I signed with it. I had my plane ticket booked to Finland. We're gone, and I took a, because it was like late summer, early fall when it was on. So I hadn't fought anybody since like say February, and so I took an MMA fight like 2 weeks before I was supposed to be over in Finland at this event. And I booked this fight that was supposed to just kind of be a tune-up fight and get me ready for this event against like kind of an unknown kid. And he ended up like knocking me unconscious, like T-Rex arms, like
shit.
I was at. So, this is when YouTube was just kind of coming out and stuff. So I tried to keep it hush hush. And the promoters over in Finland got a hold of that. And they're like, "Man, we can't bring you over. Like, it wouldn't be very good for our product if, like seeing that, this kid destroy you 2 weeks before, they needed me to get medically cleared." And probably good thing I didn't go at the time, looking back on it. But so I was super disappointed because these were two events that I was, I wanted to be a part of. So when these guys with Ice Wars contacted me, I mean, I jumped at it right away. And we were actually up in Danbury about a month back, and I sat down with AJ, and we talked about, a lot of stuff and the direction we wanted, he wants to take it. And I've been talking to him, every week, just spitballing ideas about, this whole event. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a unique format. It's a unique thing. And yeah, I want to be a part of it, as much as I can moving forward. I think it's awesome.
Oh, for sure. And I always said this when I first heard of it. If you'd have told me like a year ago that there was going to be a hockey fight tournament in the year of 2022, I just said you're fucking nuts, because hockey fighting now just has that aura around it, and people are so concerned with concussions and CTE and everything like that. So I have no clue how the fuck they're going to pull this off, but it looks like it's going to happen. And I've talked with a couple guys with it. I know Charlie's reached out to me to kind of go over some stuff with the podcast and them over there. So I'm looking forward to see where it goes. And if I can somehow get there, I would be there in a fucking heartbeat wherever it's going to be held. I'm not sure if it's going to be in Canada or the US yet.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I'm in no rush to get back to Canada, just with everything going on up there right now.
Right.
So I kind of made it clear that, that I don't want to compete in Canada. Just because I don't, until Canada becomes, a safe place for people to be, I don't want to set foot in that country. And it's kind of sad, actually. My mom and my brother are up there right now, and my brother's trying to get out. It's a bad direction that country's going. So like I said, going back to the Ice War stuff, like I said, the first event down here, we've looked at, we've talked about maybe Vegas, maybe Biloxi, possibly even in Columbus. Who knows? Maybe Tampa. Tampa's been mentioned. So
yeah, I remember initially there was going to be one that was going to be in. I think they had talked about it in the early rumblings of Tampa, and I would have been there, but of course it's gotten kicked back a little bit, and everything with COVID, and you never know what some restrictions different. Every state's different. I know that was a big thing at the time. I think now it's starting to open up a bit more. But yeah, whenever it happens, I definitely want to either be there or I'll definitely be watching it and on pay-per-view. And definitely looking forward to seeing you compete for sure. So the next year though, you end up in Tulsa. And one fight I got to ask you about, and another big name in the minor pro world that you fought, and this dude's fucking tough, was Brett Angel.
Yeah, it's funny. I actually another sports reporter actually sent me a message today about the fight against Brett Angel. That was kind of the beginning of the end for me in Tulsa. We were in Bossier, we were in Shreveport, Louisiana, and Angel had just gotten sent down from Columbus, I think, from the NHL. And so like this guy's 6'8", 280 pounds. And I'm, I got, a wife, 2 kids, trying to make it to the next level kind of thing. And, trying to be a part of it. And Dan Hodge was our coach, and he goes, Schmitty, under no circumstances do you fight Brett Angel. Shreveport, that arena seats, 8,000 people. It's going nuts. We're down 5-0 at the end of the second. And so I go out, and so I'm lined up against Brett Angel, and like I'm now the person I am, if Jerome Bouchard tells me I can't fight, I'm not going to fight. But at that time I was, young and, maybe a little more ego driven. So I'm like, let's go, man. So I drop my gloves, we square off, and he's so big and so strong. And he hit me like 3 times, and he actually like hit me in the back of the head. And I actually have a scar on the back of my head because he hit me so hard on the back top of my head, like it pressure cut and blew my head apart. And so I have this big like scar, like I have a big bald spot on top of my head, but I also have like another big bald spot further back from Brett Angel. So I get into the dressing room, and Hodgie comes in. He's, he needed to be pissed off at someone, pissed off at all of us. But Schmit, take your fucking shit off. You're done here. So I'm crying, I'm all upset, and I just lost. My team lost. I didn't really fit into the scheme of things in Tulsa then. So we got home, and I told my wife, and I said, probably best to start packing. We got home from Shreveport, and then we headed up on the road. I think we were in Rapid City one night, and Colorado against the Eagles the next night or something. And I played 2 more games for Tulsa, and I played like shit. I think it was -5 or something. And we got back to Tulsa, and it was a Sunday. I remember it was a Sunday afternoon, and I'm smart enough to kind of see the writing on the wall. And my wife had the apartment packed up already, and we got back on Sunday morning from the road, and I think Sunday night, Hodgie called me to the office. Yeah, Schmitty, we're letting you go. So I was, I knew what was going on. And then, at that time, like being married, my marriage was kind of on the way out at the time too. So my life was kind of falling apart. So we headed back to Canada, and I played senior there for a few years. And, senior back home was actually pretty good hockey. It's actually really, really good hockey. I was, able to play quite a bit, and I, started a business there and stuff. So, sometimes things work out the way they're supposed to too, right?
For sure, man. So, after Tulsa and, you're gone, you stepped away from the game, you're playing senior hockey a bit, but you actually get really involved into like MMA and boxing. How did that kind of come about for you?
I was just, I amateur boxed, growing up, and then got back home, and started kind of messing around a little bit with MMA, and took some fights, and did pretty well at the amateur level, and then did pretty well at the amateur level, and then went went pro and opened a gym, and it was definitely a learning experience, running a business and stuff. But I had a good run as a pro fighter. I was never, I don't know, I was always kind of like that gatekeeper, right? Where I was probably never gonna, make it to the show, but if you beat me, you're probably gonna go to the show, So I fought a lot of really, really good guys that ended up, having really, really good long careers. So I'm pretty proud of that, that I never, ever, ever turned down a fight, and I fought at multiple weight classes, and I think in 19 pro MMA fights, I only missed weight the one time, moving from heavyweight to light heavyweight to middleweight. And I even fought at welterweight a few times.
How tough is that? I've always wondered that, because it's funny. People always ask me, you're into hockey fights all the time. Do you watch MMA? I really don't watch that much MMA and boxing. But one thing that's kind of interested in me is how hard is it to cut weight? And like you said, you just went from like a heavyweight to a welterweight. How hard is it to cut weight like that, man?
It's funny. It's kind of one of those things. Like it's almost like a euphoric feeling. Like when you're cutting weight and you're like pushing to make a certain weight, and you're like, I want to, I got to make 170 or make 172 or 175 or whatever. And you're water loading and you're focusing on your diet and all sorts of things. And then, and then you have that, that big weight cut where you got to cut all that water out of yourself. And when you finally make that weight, it's a feeling that you'll never be able to replicate, right? You can't describe the feeling to someone, but it definitely kicks the shit out of you going from 195 to 170 pounds in 24 hours.
Yeah, that's fucking insane. Yeah, maybe I need to start cutting weight, that's for sure. But aside from the MMA, and we got it, talked to you about it a little bit before we got going, but you're actually involved with the rodeo as well. When did that kind of start, and what exactly do you do with rodeo?
I always grew up around rodeo, and it was, I grew up in a rodeo family. And I tried riding bulls for quite a while, and I was never too good at it. So then, my best, one of my closest friends, he's one of the best bullfighters in the world. And, I was like, let me give it a try, and I stepped into it, and I did pretty well at it. And, I had some success at it, and I actually, moved down to the States last summer and entered some freestyle bullfights, fighting some, Spanish fighting bulls, which is a whole new world, man. It's absolutely crazy.
Yeah, for sure. So, we're here now with 2021, the 22 season. You're with Columbus now, and you've already, like I said, you've made a big splash in the hockey fight world and just sports in general. Because like I said, even John Boy Media covered it, which is a massive channel for sports reviews and video breakdowns and what have you. But you actually signed with the Columbus River Dragons. How was it? What made you come back and want to go pro again from being, your last season was 08-09, and now fast forward, we're here 2021-22, and you're signed with Columbus. How did that kind of come about with you signing here?
Hang on one second. Yeah, no, I signed with so I was actually living with Goose in Huntsville, and I was rodeoing, and Jared Rutledge is the goalie here in Columbus, and I've known him for years. And he said like, do you still have a desire to play pro? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. And he's like, well, we need a tough guy here, and in Columbus. So I came to Columbus and I was like, Jerome, I didn't know Jerome personally. But he, I played against him and I always like, I was always kind of, I was always kind of on a different, the other end of things with them. And, Jerome welcomed me and, I've been able to, play a role for him. And, he's the type of coach where, there's a lot of coaches that, just expect you to go to war for them because they say so. And Jerome's one of those coaches that, you'll follow into hell and back. He's one of those guys that's been there and he coaches the same way he played. He coaches with his heart on his sleeve and he played with his heart on his sleeve. So he's one of those guys that no matter how busted up or how hurt or how scared you are, you're gonna go to war for that man.
No, for sure. It's how did this whole rivalry that you got going on with Joe Pace come about? Because you see these fights with you guys, and it's almost like boxing slash like MMA style. You're touching knucks at the at center ice, and then there's zero defense in these fights. I mean, it's very. I said it to somebody once they first started making their rounds to me. I was like, I haven't seen fights like this since like the Bosse Morasti kind of saga. Like this is fucking insane. How did this rivalry with Joe Pace start?
Well, Pacer and I started at the same time, right? We started playing pro hockey at the same time. Actually he signed me in Port Huron one year. I signed there and I signed in Knoxville that year and I ended up actually having a brain aneurysm. So I couldn't play anywhere. I couldn't really do much of anything that year. I got punched in the head in an MMA fight and busted my head up pretty good and ended up with an aneurysm. So I didn't end up playing at all. But so Pacer and I were, we knew each other. We were cordial to each other, through the years in the minors. And then we were in Biloxi one night because they're bringing a team into Mississippi, and Pacer's kind of running it, but he was playing for Port Huron, and we just ended up having a really, really, really good fight. Like it was just a spur of the moment, like which don't have, in my role, those type of fights don't happen very often. It was just like, let's go, ready, yeah, okay, and it just turned out to be a really, really great fight. So then the next night we're in Columbus, and I'm like, let's go again, you know what I mean? But let's square off and do it right, like rather than not jump each other, but like let's find a time and place and let's do it right. So we were totally honest about it, and we touch gloves just so we know we're ready. And then Pacer and I we have such a similar build, and like our arms are pretty much the exact same length. His head might be a little bigger than mine, but we just grab on and we're swinging for the fences, and like some people, like a lot of like some sports writers and some people on the internet have said they're staged or whatever, and I mean, we know they're coming and we know when it's going to happen, but that's it. The rest of the fight, we're going, we're trying to hurt each other, but there's no animosity. It's we've both been pretty successful at what we've done.
Yeah, I've never liked that term staged. I hate like the media made that up. I hate the term staged in hockey because it's like it's the wrong word. I think if you're gonna say anything, maybe it's a planned fight. Like okay, we're gonna go this time, or you're talking in warm-ups. You want to go tonight? Okay, yeah, we'll go. The term staged just sounds fake. It makes it sound like pro wrestling to me. I've never liked that term for hockey fights at all.
Yeah, those fights with Pacer, like if you look at my hands, like I think like my hands, like we're making direct contact with each other's faces. Every time I fought Pacer, I've left. We both left with definitely with each other's blood on each other.
For sure. And another guy you've also developed a rivalry with. You fought him more than Pace this year so far, but that's Nick Williams, and it's almost the same thing. You just stand in the pocket and fucking throw. There's no defense. There's no jersey jabbing, and just don't hit me. It's you're fucking wide open the entire time.
Yeah, Willie's another guy that Willie and I are actually really close friends. Like Willie's the guy that I can go to with, if I'm having a bad day or something, I can have a talk with Willie about those things. We're really good friends. And we're just both trying to do a job. Difference between Willie and Pacer is Willie hits like a fucking truck, man. Like when Willie hits you in the head, it like I felt my teeth rattle. You know what I mean? Like Willie hits so fucking hard, man. And same thing, right? It's mutual respect, and we're just two guys trying to do a job for our team. Like there's zero animosity, and in fact, I think knowing what we both have to go through, leading up to those fights, I think that actually makes us probably closer in a certain sense.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. Well, man, there we have it. Your kind of career wrapped up, at least, up until this point. And I'm looking forward to seeing you compete at the Ice Wars tournament that's going to go on with AJ Galante and them. I do have one question for you, though. Is there a chance that we see Justin Schmit for the 2022-23 season in Columbus?
I'm hoping so. I mean, right now my focus is obviously, we got this last month before playoffs, and then, hopefully we can bring a championship to Columbus. Whatever direction, they want to go next season, I guess, that's up to me and how well I perform, the next month. But yeah, as long as I can, I'd love to finish my career here in Columbus, but if not, if they want to go a certain direction next year, that's on them. And I like I said, I'd love to play here till I'm 100 if I can. But if not, hopefully I can find a home somewhere else, and I'll give that team my best effort.
Absolutely, man. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to come on the show and talk about your career. Legendary career so far is unreal. So thank you, Justin, for coming on the show, man. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me on.
For sure. Anytime. Maybe I'll get you back on after the Ice Wars tournament, and we'll get some stories how that all came about.
That'd be cool. It'd be fun to have me and Willie on, or me and Pacer on too one night. That'd be a fun.
Oh, if we can arrange that'd be great. We'll do like a fight breakdown of both your, compilation. We'll break it down for you.
That'd be really neat too.
Absolutely, man. Well, you have yourself a good night, Justin. Thank you again.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much for having me.
For sure. Have a good one, man.
Okay, take care.
Bye.